Hello YouTube, welcome to Groundworks. In the previous episode of the KSS Big Bang you have seen the assembly of the SSTO Heavy Mark IV Odin. This is the spec of the aircraft. In today's episode we will feature its maiden voyage to the low carbon orbit to the Kerbal space station Big Bang. Its payload is one heavy orange fuel tank and its mission to deliver it to the station. Three brave pilots will take part in this experimental endeavor: Halson Kerman, Pederli Kerman and Orbis Kerman. As you can see, this is the payload and it is attached to a fuel tug that will take it to the space station. This is an upgraded version of the previous fuel tug that was launched. Previous fuel tug featured only 2 RCS ports. This one has 4 for easier docking maneuvering. So now let us make sure that we align space station so that it is ready for launch. Okay, waiting until they align nicely, and I'm basically waiting for dawn because it wouldn't be really too much fun launching in the dark now, would it? So okay, dawn and space station coming in. That's it. Alright, set it as a target. Turn SAS on. Let's go to the runway. Lights on, engine on, and go. Release the brakes. By the way, these sabers that we have introduced during the later stages of the design, medium sabers, are much more powerful than all those small ones that we had before on the wings, and they provide slightly more but still sufficient thrust to make sure that we are able to take off and go to the orbit. And this twin tailplane does ensure additional stability. So, leaving Kerbal Space Center behind and going into the sunrise. By the way, I'm pretty sure you have all seen me launch space planes into the orbit, so I will make sure that this goes in at least 4 to 8 times acceleration. So this is our path. I was considering also putting a docking port on this during the design of this SSTO, but unfortunately that would introduce some additional complexities, either putting it on top or putting it on the side or on the nose. So basically I have decided for the next iteration of the space plane that I will be featuring, Mark V, should probably have the docking port either on the nose or on the top. I have still yet to determine that. In the meantime, this SSTO is on its way to orbit. We're already at 20,000 meters and we are basically trying to burn as fast as we can to gain some speed. Slowly starting to see the heating effects. (1,300 meters per second). Going a little bit time warp. pretty soon we will be switching to the Sabre rocket mode and closing off as soon as our intake air passes somewhere around 100% mark. And there we go. Now it's just trying to burn as quickly as we can for the orbit. It is a little bit nose heavy, so it requires some manual lifting, but it gets there. And our apoapsis is at 92 kilometers, so we're just making sure that we are ready for the circularization burn. And as you can see, since we went pretty fast, it's not really that much in terms of delta V, just 115. So I must say I'm pretty happy with the design of this spaceplane. It looks like a really big spaceplane, so it's kind of cool. It's not too far off, and it's not too crazy looking. So, and I must say it performs rather well. I have purposely put the ascent to the orbit and the circularization in a time accelerated manner, so we can have more time for this episode for the rendezvous procedure and all that, because I think that was pretty cool part as a highlight. So now Kerbal alarm clock warning me that we're basically already at the maneuver node, burning for the circularization, and time to perform a rendezvous. So just fiddling a little bit back and forth. Since we launched at a pretty ideal stage, it wasn't too difficult to get a good encounter, which was very low on the delta V, I must say. Given the fact that it's 200 kilometer orbit, this has been really favorable. So getting there, and we will start the burn in, say, roughly 10 seconds. 5, go. And that's it. Alright, just fiddling to closen up the separation. So 3 kilometers, which is pretty good. And setting an alarm just to make sure we don't miss it. Saving the game in case the Kraken hits. And let's proceed to the rendezvous, shall we? Let's see. I'm also, by the way, burning a little bit compared to the target to make sure that my approach vector goes directly to the space station. You can see me fiddling and making sure that the yellow marker and the pink marker on the nav ball align, because I found this to be a very handy way to ensure that I get a very close approach in terms of towards the space station. And here you can see us 6.5 kilometers out. Just removing some unnecessary parameters from the Kerbal engineer. Station approaching in the background. And now it's all a matter of coming as close as possible and cancelling our relative velocity to the space station. Note that this is done in 5 times acceleration, but to you it will appear as it is very fluid, because the station is quite big, and actually it's, well, I was roughly playing it in some 7 frames per second, so basically 4 times, 5 times gives you a sort of a fluid motion. Note also that I was playing with a B9 in a 0.24.2, which had a little bit bugged out cockpits which were semi-translucent, so it has been fixed. Okay, and we have Halson and Pederley jumping with excitement as we are approaching the Big Bang. and currently our target marker is off, but we are not aiming for the docking anyway. We are just trying to get as close as possible to the station. So just making sure that we come in as close as possible, using a little bit of RCS because we have plenty. Why not? Some 400 meters out. You can see me also with RCS playing, trying to again align the yellow and the pink markers on the nav ball, basically making sure I go in reverse towards the station. So, and as soon as we come close enough, I will just set the target relative speed to 0, and then we will deploy our payload, which is pretty much now. So cancelling out our relative velocity, 0.3, 0.2, and there we go. Making sure that we save the game and control from here, and time to deploy the space tug. So just making sure that all the fuel has been correctly put into the fuel tank, and we have a separation going out of the plane. And by the way, this probe is entirely controlled by Remotek. So now you can see actually why I had 4 of these girders going the full length of the fuel tank, because this gives me authority in basically all 6 directions, which I didn't have with the previous tank. Previous tank only had 2, so I would have to roll it before I introduced any translation. So we will definitely see that we deploy the fuel tank to the opposite of the previous one. Anyway, the SSTO is much more fuel efficient than the rockets and also much cheaper, so if you're playing with funds, this would be a way to go. So now we are slowly approaching the docking port. Like I said, we will not dock to this one, but for getting in close we can use that one. Why not? By the way, I really like how the MKS OKS module pack from Roverdude makes sure that the station looks really awesome. Its inflatable modules are really way to go. And this is also a self-sufficient space station since it's producing its own life support. Well, almost self-sufficient. I don't have the machine parts. That part still has to be brought by SSTO, but still, in terms of producing food, it's perfectly capable of producing its own food. So flipping the tug back, now selecting the correct docking port, okay, we are pretty much very well aligned, and now it's just a little bit of fiddling with RCS to make sure that we dock with the space station. We're 16 meters out, 14, 10, 7.5. Now making sure that we are aligned with the docking port before we start thrusting forward. Okay, and time to go towards it. 4 meters. 3, 2, 1, and docked. That's it. We have successfully delivered yet another orange tank into the Kerbal space station. So, time for going home. Our mission is success. in terms of delivery. Now the only thing which remains is to bring our crew safely on board back to the Kerbal Space Center. We're now making sure that we clear the space station before we start burning. Turning the aircraft slowly retrograde. And pretty soon we will be engaging the engines to make sure that we perform a deorbit burn. So, and here we go. Take a final glance at the Kerbal Space Station. Halson and Peterle look in awe as the Kerbal Space Station slowly drifts away. Okay, now it's time to perform the deorbit burn. We have the Kerbal Space Center on the sunlight, which is perfect. So we only need to basically make sure that we put the aircraft into an orbit where it would be conveniently placed so that it's going on a safe re-entry. Okay, we have circularized the orbit, and now we are about to get ready for the deorbit burn. So, by the way, I will also have a re-entry slightly accelerated unless something happens, for example, like, okay, and we are a little bit pumping the fuel forward just to make sure that our center of mass is in front of our center of lift to make this plane stable on re-entry. Just pumping the fuel forwards, and yep, looks okay to me. Okay, this will be our deorbit burn to ensure that we basically slowly bleed off our energy while in high atmosphere, so that deadly re-entry doesn't chew us up. Coming up on the deorbit burn, tweaking it a little bit, and it's time for re-entry. Now this plane has not yet been tested on the re-entry, so I'm a little bit anxious in terms of getting it back. So I've enabled all of the air brakes and open all of the air intakes, just to make sure that I introduce enough drag so the aircraft remains stable. And basically I'm going for a little bit more shallow approach, so I don't go into a too dense atmosphere, as otherwise I might get chewed up by the deadly re-entry heating. So coming up on the 30-kilometer mark, we are very slowly decelerating because air is very thin and at this altitude, and the air brakes are not getting a full grip. Once we get below 30, it's when we will be really making sure that we are decelerating. So right now we're just coasting until we get to that. Oh, and we are already starting to go up a little bit. I guess I have pitched up a little bit too much, but still we will bleed off energy. And so we're basically, this is pretty much how the actual shuttle is doing. It's basically skipping off in the higher levels of the atmosphere until it bleeds off enough energy so that it can do the re-entry. So we're basically just skipping off the upper atmosphere and slowly diving into the lower one. We're coming up on the deserts, and now I'm started slowly to pitching downwards just to make sure that we can actually re-enter. Clearly our crew doesn't seem to mind. They're thoroughly enjoying themselves. Slightly below 6 Mach. FAR doesn't seem to have an issue with us yet. Okay, there we see the re-entry heating, but we are already at 1800, so assuming that I don't descend faster than this 100, I should be clearing it pretty well. We are getting very hot, it's 1000 degrees, but still it's no damage yet. Very nice, and pretty soon 1300, and pretty soon we will be passing the critical temperature, and yep, it seems that our temperature is starting to decrease, which means we have successfully survived the shock waves of the re-entry. Okay, time to slowly start the engines. Any time now. We can already see the Kerbal Space Center. We're still going very far, so I will be deploying the air brakes pretty soon. Once again. Slight wiggle there and there, but still maintaining stable. And at this point, when loading the KSC, my game actually crashed, so at a certain point you will see me reloading a save, like here. So I have turned on the engines and we're just aligning for the final approach. 10 kilometers out. 4, 3, and time for landing. Almost there. Oops. Putting the landing gear. Making final adjustments, aligning with the runway. Quickly go down. And touchdown. Engage the brakes. Make sure that we slow down sufficiently. So this has been so much for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the episode, please do like the episode, and for more Kerbal Space Center Kerbal Space Program content, hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much for watching. This is Groundforks signing off.